day, I am Escoreal, and at this juncture, I will tackle about the new Constitution of the Philippines. So first, let us define what is Constitution. So ang Constitution or ang saligang batas, mao ni siya ang gigamit alang sa mga patakaran, mga mando o mga balaod. Ang Constitution, mao ni siya pinaka-highest law of our nation. Ang Constitution, naghatag ni siya og sukaranan sa usa ka nasod kung unsaon kini pagdumala, hinungdan nga masiguro ug mahatag jud ang mga interes ug mga panginahanglan sa matag usa. And here in the Philippines, our constitution is a written constitution kung diin ang mga longings sa mga tao was expressed through their direct representatives. So for example, naa mo tayo kadaya iyang mga barangay captain, di ba? And we have elected and chosen that person because kabaluta nga pinaagi kaniya ma-express ang atong mga hinanaing, mga concerns ug madungog kini. So, what is the purpose of the Constitution? So first, Constitution serves as the fundamental law of the land. So, ngano kahang gitawag ni siya og fundamental law of the land? Because ang Constitution is the primary source of the law. Ang Constitution is a very important instrument in a nation. Because ang Constitution naghatag ni siya og mga patakaran nga giila sa mga tao nga og para ma-preserve ug ma-maintain ang kalinaw ug kahusay sa usa ka katilingban. Ang Constitution is a paramount law in which all other laws are based on. So kung naa maging mahitabo nga conflict between a constitution and an ordinary law, the Constitution will prevail in all respects. Ang Constitution gihapoy masunod ug madaog. So second, it provides essential framework sa kung diin ang three essential branches of the government, which are the executive, the legislative, and the judicial, are described and defined as constitution of government. Ug ang essential liberties nga mga tao nga nagpuyo sa usa ka particular nga lugar is called a constitution of liberty. So going back, para masabtan ninyo ang three essential branches sa government, I will discuss it to you. So first, we have the executive branch. Sa executive branch, gitawag po ni siya o law enforcing body. So later on, makahibaw na mo kung saan siya. So, this executive branch, power is vested in the government under the leadership of the president. So, for example, as of the moment, our president, kay si President Digong Duterte, and he both functions as the head of the state and the head of the government. And also, he is the chief commander of the armed forces of the Philippines. He was elected by the majority of the people. Nakalingkod siya sa unong katuig. And this executive branch na adiri ang president, ang vice president in his cabinet, ug mga independent agencies. So next, we have the legislative branch. So this is a legislative branch, gitawag ni siya og law-making body. Yes, because this is a legislative branch na adiri ang Kongreso that composed of the Senate and the House of Representatives. So, kining mga Senado o mga House of Representatives, mauni siya ang tagabuhat o mga balaod. And diri sa legislative branch, dili lang sila ang buhat sa balaod, kundi they have the authority to declare war. And they control the expenses, the taxation of the Philippines. So next, we have the judicial branch. In judicial branch, power is vested in the Supreme Court, which ang Supreme Court, ang head niya is ang Chief Justice that has 4 associate justices. And these members of the Supreme Court was appointed by the President. So unlike sa executive and legislative branch, ang mga tao dito was elected by the majority of the people's vote. While diri sa judicial branch, they were appointed only by the President on the recommendation of the Bar Council. So, ang executive branch, gitawag ni siya og law-making body because sila mo accept and sign and signed sa mga batas nga gihatag o gibuhat sa legislative branch which called as law-making body. And ang mga batas nga ilahang gibuhat ag mag-interpret niini kay mao ang mga members sa judicial branch. Maong gitawag ang mga judicial branch as the law interpreting body. Now, let's proceed to the Constitution of the Philippines. So, diri mahibalaan ninyo ang evolution sa konstitusyon diri sa Pilipinas. So, first constitution we have, Malolos Constitution. So, Malolos Constitution is also known as La Constitución Política de Malolos. And this constitution was written in Spanish. Because that time, our official language is Spanish language. And following the declaration of the independence from Spain by the revolutionary government, a congress was held at Malolos, Bulacan in September 15, 1898. Ug sa nahitabo nga ang Malolos Congress, there were so much achievements nga natuman. First, in September 28, 1898, ratified the Declaration of the Philippine Independence held at Kawit, Cavite on June 12, 1898. Second, passage of the law that allowed the Philippines nga makahulam og 20 milyones sa mga bangko para sa government expenses. Third, the establishment of Universidad Literatura de Filipinas and other schools. Fourth, the drafting of the Philippine Constitution, which is ang Malolos Constitution. And fifth, the declaring war against the United States on June 12, 1899. And this constitution, Malolos Constitution, was written by Felipe Calderon Gonzalez y Roca. Yes, Felipe Calderon was a lawyer, a Filipino lawyer, a politician, and an intellectual. And he is also known as the father of Malolos Constitution. And along with his co-author na nagsuwat sa Malolos Constitution nga giila nga si Felipe Joho Buencamino Sr. was a Filipino politician and a lawyer. Kini si Felipe Buencamino Sr. giila ni siya nga traidor sa atong nasod. Why? Because he fought alongside the Spaniards in the Philippine Revolution, but then later on, nidapig siya o niapil siya sa Revolution Cabinet nga gipanguluhan ni Emilio Aguinaldo. This constitution states the basic civil rights, the separation of the church and the state, and it declares that the people have the exclusive sovereignty. Naa sa mga tao ang gahom. This constitution calls for a presidential form of government kung diin ang presidente was elected by the majority of the assembly and makalingkod sa termino sud sa upat ka tuig. And this constitution established democratic republican government with three branches, ang executive, ang legislative, ug ang judicial branch. This executive na din ang presidente which acts as the head of the government. Legislative powers is exercised by the Assembly of Representatives of the nation, and judicial power is lodged in the Supreme Court. And before pa sa Malolos Constitution, naapil tayo gitawag nga Konstitusyon halal sa biak na bato on November 1, 1897. Kini nga konstitusyon halal sa biak na bato giila ni siya nga temporary constitution sa Philippine Revolutionary Government during the Spanish Revolution. So mao ni siya ang Malolos Constitution. Okay, next we have the 1935 Constitution. So, 1935 Constitution was approved and adopted by the Commonwealth of the Philippines sa katuigan ng 1935 to 1936 and was later used by the Third Republic of the Philippines in year 1946 to 1972. This constitution was written with an eye to meeting the approval of the United States o para masiguro ng United States will keep its promise nga tagaan na o kagawasan ang Pilipinas. So, kung nakagawas maganita sa Spain, sa mga Espanyol, gisakop na punta sa Amerika. Kay nga naman, because the Spain sold the Philippines to America sa kantidad nga $20 million. So kung hunahon-naon ni mo, mura jud nakatagyan ni mga Espanyol. Pero yeah, let's move on. So this constitution was written by the Constitutional Convention on 1934 and it was approved on February 8, 1935 and was fully accepted by the President Roosevelt in Washington, D.C. So this constitution, kini nga constitution naghatag siya og legal nga basihan sa Commonwealth government and that considered as the transition government sa wala pa ang paghatag sa kagawasan sa Pilipinas uban sa American-inspired constitution. So, ang gobyerno sa Pilipinas magsunod sa sistema niini sa gobyerno sa Amerika. But then, it has been said that the 1935 Constitution was the best written Philippine charter ever. Moreover, the 1935 Constitution provides a unicameral Congress kung diin one chamber ni siya ug usara ang Legislative House ug naay unom ka tuig nga makalingkod ang presidente. And then, in 1940, it was changed and replaced to have a bicameral Congress kung diin na ay it composed of a Senate and House of Representatives. Dili nga constitution, the president was limited to have only a 4-year term with a maximum of 2 consecutive years. So mao ni siya ang gitawag nga 1935 Constitution. Next, we have the 1943 Constitution of the Republic of the Philippines. This constitution happens during the World War II. So, the 1943 Constitution provides a strong executive powers. The legislature consisted of the National Assembly and only those considered as anti-US could stand for election. Kaya nga naman, because this constitution, the 1943 Constitution, was a Japanese-sponsored constitution. During the World War II, Premier Hideki Toho promised the Filipinos the honor of independence, meaning that the commission would be replaced by a formal republic. So, kinsa man si Premier Hideki Toho? He was a statesman, a general, and ang Prime Minister of Japan during the World War II. During the World War II, the Japanese-sponsored government nullified, ibaliwala nila ang 1935 Constitution and appointed a preparatory committee on Philippine independence to replace it. Ug mao ni siya ang 1943 Constitution. The 1943 Constitution was legally accepted by the Kalibapi. Ang Kalibapi mauni sila ang kapisanan sa paglilingkod sa bagong Pilipinas. Kalibapi serves as the propaganda machine of the Japanese o para makuha ang simpatya o pakikiisa sa mga Pilipino niini. Kalibapi was later established as a political party o ang uban nga political parties was abolished and only ang Kalibapi was allowed to exist by the Japanese. And on October 14, 1943, Jose P. Laurel was elected as the president by the majority of the assembly. Can I say President Jose P. Laurel was highly regarded by the Japanese? Ganahan kayo ang mga Japanese aniniya because Jose P. Laurel openly criticized, gisaway niya ang pagpamalakad sa United States sa Pilipinas. O kini si Jose P. Laurel, nakahuman siya og degree sa Tokyo International University. So this constitution, the 1943 Constitution, was recognized as legitimate only sa mga Japanese-controlled areas sa Pilipinas and was nullified, ignored sa mga United States government o Philippine Commonwealth government. So mao ni siya ang 1943 Constitution. Next, we have the 1973 Constitution of the Republic of the Philippines. This constitution was drafted and presented to President Ferdinand Marcos by the 1971 Constitutional Convention and was legally accepted by the citizen assemblies. President Ferdinand Marcos announced that this constitution had been ratified and full force and effect on January 17, 1973. Pero daghan gihapon ang ni-oppose niini. Kay nga naman, because this constitution saw the implementation of martial law. On September 21, 1972, President Ferdinand Marcos declares that the Philippines is under martial law. Gideclare niya ang martial law para mahunong na ang nakadaghan nga alitan sibil o para sa mahunong na ang threat sa mga komunista sa pag-takeover kay ikadaghan na nga nihitabo ang pagbomba sa Manila. That's why, instead nga civilian government ang mga siwa sa pamalaan, ang mga militar na ang nangasiwa niini para masiguro nga mabalik ang kahusay ug kalinaw. Next, we have the 1986 Provisional Constitution, or also known as the Freedom Constitution. So this constitution was publicly announced by President Corazon C. Aquino on March 25, 1986. This constitution is a temporary constitution of the Philippines after a successful People Power Revolution. Nahitabo ang People Power Revolution, which gathered millions of Filipinos that marched along the Epifanio de los Andes Avenue, or EDSA, para mahunong na ang dictatorship ni President Ferdinand Marcos, because supposedly mahuman ang ikaduhang termino ni Marcos in December 1973, because ang 1935 Constitution of the Philippines allowed him to have only 2 4-year terms. However, Marcos issued proclamation in 1081 placing the entirety of the Philippines under martial law. So effectively, na-extend jud ang iyang termino. Pero sa nahitabo nga People Power Revolution, mauni ang rason nganong napanaog si President Ferdinand Marcos sa iyang presidency. Ug ang nipuli nga president niini kay si President Corazon C. Aquino. This constitution guaranteed that the government will respect basic human rights and fundamental freedom. Under the Freedom Constitution, ang executive and legislative powers are exercised by the President and shall continue to exercise the legislative power hangtod nga naay ma-elect nga legislature. And furthermore, President Corazon C. Aquino mandated and tasked the Constitutional Commission to draft a new charter. Ug mauna ni siya ang 1987 Constitution of the Philippines. The 1987 Constitution was crafted by Cecilia Muñoz Palma, the President of Constitutional Commission, and this constitution came into full force and effect on February 11, 1987. This constitution is intended as the transitional government to ensure democracy and the freedom of the people. Sa pagbungkag sa diktadora o pagbalik sa democratic institution, the 1987 Constitution provided that ang civilian authority kay maoy labing labaw sa militar sa tanang panahon. And the 1987 Constitution also provides that the armed forces of the Philippines kay maoy protektor ug tagapagpanalipod sa mga katawhan ug sa estado niini. Furthermore, the 1987 Constitution is the current Constitution of the Philippines. So that would be all for the new Constitution of the Philippines, and thank you for listening.